All right. I promised to talk about this book, Transland, by Mix Sly. Transland, Consent, Kink, and Pleasure, subtitle of the book. This book is a memoir. It's very well written. You can tell that the author is very sensitive, very observant. And in addition to those qualities, in addition to caring about the craft of writing, they also have a unique vantage point on society and culture. And that unique vantage point partly comes from, or largely comes from, as we read this memoir, comes from identifying as queer, genderqueer, or non binary. Because of that, maybe thanks to that, they are able to see all the ways in which the so called cisgender people go through their lives, go through this decision points. That's really important, that we all go through decision points as we, in our day-to-day life, as we interact with people, as we navigate the social world, our relationships, our work, as we navigate through situations. There are these decision points, and for some people, those decision points are easier because their lives are more aligned, more compatible with the existing conventions. So these conventions, some of them have to do with the presentation of self, presentation of gender, the performance of gender, how performance of gender involves interacting with others, treating others, and taking steps towards intimacy, acting with the aim of intimacy. So if you think about that category of cisgender, and that's not a unified, uniform, homogeneous, uniform category, that everybody who is in this category is equal. But there are areas in that category of cisgender that if people find themselves there, it's much easier for them to take a lot of things for granted. And they take these decisions, make decisions, take actions without thinking too much about it, because they're already, the tendencies that they have, the tendencies that they find in themselves are harmonious with how things are supposed to be done. But for some people, and gender queerness is not the only way. This can happen for many, many different reasons. It can happen through, neurodiversity or neurodivergence. It could happen for any reason. A person could find themselves outside of the tacitly held world that is shared by everybody else, seems to be shared by everybody else. It could happen through immigration. The theme here is about, on the one hand, situations where you find your life, the way of your life is paved by convention. Your life is like laid out for you. You can proceed according to the existing convention. So you have like some tendencies in you that are convention friendly. And in certain domains of our lives, you might have those convention friendly tendencies. In some other areas, the life is not laid out. The convention is maybe even against you. You have to run counter to the forces of convention. And in fact, it is through that we become aware that the conventions are forceful, that there is force in them, that they are not just there as guidelines and you can follow them or you cannot. If you don't follow them, you feel the force, you feel the pressure. And that's the unique vantage point. That's the advantage of a creative writer, to have access. For a creative writer, it is an advantage. Maybe for their personal life, it is a disadvantage because it takes so much effort to take care of decisions, to think through decisions that might come easily to most people. But for them, it takes a lot of effort. And so they are very aware of what is going on and why they are doing what they're doing. In the domain of pleasure, intimacy. Is this book a sexual memoir? It certainly begins with sexuality, and sexuality is a theme that opens introduces us to the writer. But through sexuality, we get to lots of other things. We think about societal issues in general, convention in general, culture, inclusion, relationships, consent, trust. Trust is a big theme. Reasons why we need trust, and positions that we adopt in relation to each other, and how sometimes what we need is not necessarily just a relationship in general, but instead a certain position in a relationship, maybe a dominant position or a submissive position. So the need is for that structure, the structure of a relationship, which allows one to occupy a certain position in relation to the other, and all the emotional impact and consequences of that positionality. So those are really interesting. I found the book really engaging for those reasons. There's this concept of the subspace that the author, Sly, they explore that, and the way they describe that is very illuminating. Okay, I'm going to talk about the challenge, for me, the big challenge of this book. But before I get to that, I just want to emphasize that the book is not going to be of interest only to the queer community. I am confident in saying that. I don't hesitate in saying that the book is of interest, should be of interest to everybody who has concerns with humanity, inclusion, and the literary task, which is paying attention, detecting to what is on the margins of the human life, not what is at the center, not what is effortlessly perceived, but what is perceived with a bit of effort. Okay, now to the challenge of the book. In this book, you can really tell that the author's project, has two sides, or has two components. One component is the component of writing a memoir, something that is confessional, that is concerned with truth, that is concerned with description of a life as they see it, as the author sees it. And that part is, if you're doing that part, you're not really concerned with the judgment of the reader. You take a risk. You don't really worry about how you're going to be judged, perceived. But maybe because of the subject matter, maybe because of the cultural politics around transgender lives and issues, I found that the author is doing something else, and that is writing for an imaginary jury, an imaginary group of people who are maybe not as open, who are ready to judge, who are ready to pass moral judgment. If the author is concerned with that, has that kind of audience in mind, they can't go all the way to telling the naked truth. They have to have in mind that jury, the potential decision of the jury. And even though I saw the memoir aspect, the memoir component of the book to be really well done, I couldn't shake off that moral standing that the author has also in mind, that, okay, I'm constructing here. What I'm constructing is also a justification for my moral standing, why I am not a bad person. Some of the topics are tricky, and I think the author should not have been concerned with that at all. In fact, if you're concerned with that, it might backfire, and it might undermine that other more literary side of your project. If you're concerned with persuasion, and if that concern with persuasion is not sufficiently extracted out of your literary project, it's kind of like being in a reality TV show. Imagine you're in a reality TV show and you're aware of the cameras that are watching you, keeping track of you. You have two choices. One choice is to explicitly acknowledge the camera and stare at the camera and look, and maybe occasionally address the camera, the audience that is looking at you or watching you through the camera. And the other choice is to completely ignore the camera and choose to ignore the camera. And the self-awareness that comes with that attention to the camera. See, it's not just the camera that you're ignoring. It is that kind of self-awareness that you're also letting go by letting go of the camera. The third thing is to not really make a decision and stay in between those two possibilities. And that interferes with I think, writing a memoir. That's just, it's a very minor thing, but I really wanted to mention that. I also wanted to mention that there's so much religious language or things that sound like religious language in this book. The religious flavor of sexuality, how sexuality serves us as a space, as a domain in which we enact and we fulfill our desire for belief. There is this short book by Julia Kristeva called This Incredible Need to Believe. If you read this book, I would highly recommend that you also read Kristeva's book, This Incredible Need to Believe. It was Kristeva's book. It was initially quite difficult for me to get through, to understand why she's treating this topic the way she's treating through psychoanalysis. But after a few weeks, the book started to open up to me, and I'm seeing the importance of Kristeva's analysis and how it is relevant and applicable to a whole bunch of domains. So BDSM, the practice of BDSM, other forms of sexuality, they are really, to some extent, to a great extent, they are about belief, the safety of belief, the ideals that we need to believe in, or some of us need to believe in certain stages of our lives. Yeah, I think that's it. I think I did say that already, that being on the margins of society, being counter to conventions, counter to the dominant forces of culture, doesn't have to arise from our sexuality and our gender, the genders we identify with. It could be for so many different reasons. And in connection to that, let me recommend Grant Shipway's book, collection of short stories, The Friend from Budapest. This is a limited edition printing that you can only acquire through contacting Grant Shipway. There are 100 copies of it. I have the number 91. And reading Transland and then reading Grant's book, The Friend from Budapest, they have a lot of things in common. Namely, finding yourself in a community, but then not really in it, in the sense that matters, in the sense that you can be comfortable, you can be yourself, you can be understood. Anyways, I would recommend Transland. And if you're watching this, if you are McSly, if you are the author, please write more. Write your next book. And I would love to read your next book. And I'm looking forward to reading what else you will do, what else you will write about. And really well done on this. And for the listeners, thank you very much. And I'll speak with you in the future.